What's going on there,
What's up, brother?
Safety Steve?
Safety Steve. That's
my new nickname for you.
Your new yeah. Well, today we get into a bunch of safety stuff in this conversation.
We do, and we are talking with the great David Tuttman.
Yes, man. DP, director, cinematographer, some of the most iconic shows, and today we're talking about Wu-Tang, American Saga.
We are talking about their re-imaging of the church shootout fight from John Woo's The Killer.
It's pretty awesome.
It is pretty awesome. And it was Kevin Rogers was the stunt coordinator.
Yep.
And he did a great job of coming up with all of the key elements of what made this scene iconic. I mean, this is going to be fun to break down.
Yeah, it's tough. You can't do it completely, right? Because the original scene is like 11 minutes and you had about 2 minutes, 10 seconds or something for Wu-Tang, but all the big moments are in there.
Yeah, he managed to get them all. So this is going to be fun talking with Dave, and also Dave's a great friend of mine, so I'm very excited to have him on the show.
Well, you worked on the show.
I did. I worked on the show for 2 seasons, and I was able to do a little bit of stunts in season 3.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah. It's cool. Like this particular scene, it's just really cool to see. They did we've talked about homages before in this show, but this is like such an awesome homage because it is its own scene. It's not a shot for shot remake, an attempt of doing it. And the end is very different. Everything is very different. It ties into
it definitely
story.
tells the story within the show. It doesn't just go off into like this, killer thing. It stays within the context of the show, and they do a great job.
There's no blind girl in there.
Yes, very true.
So for those listening that don't know, we're talking about John Woo's The Killer. You should go watch this movie. Young Chow Yun Fat. It's so good.
If you haven't seen this movie, in all honesty, shame on you.
Yes.
It's one of those. And then after you watch
if Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is the first time you saw Chow Yun Fat, you need to dial it back and look at some other shit.
Oh my God. So many other movies.
Yeah.
And definitely Hard Boiled.
Yeah. Well, Hard Boiled, also John Woo.
Yeah.
Just watch Hard Boiled and The Killer double feature.
Yes.
Do that.
And again, it's right here. The Killer.
That's it.
That's it on Blu-ray. It's one of my favorites, even though I haven't opened it yet because I probably never will.
But it's pretty, if you think about it, like if you're writing a TV show, you're the showrunner, whatever, and you choose, we're going to recreate this scene. Like you didn't pick an easy one. That's for sure.
Well, no. And it's also, you got to think, you're picking a scene. This is RZA's, brainchild. He was there every day. So this is him. Yeah. And you're talking about a guy who loves kung fu movies and action.
He eats this shit up.
He eats this shit up. I don't know if you've ever seen The Man with the Iron Fists, but that movie was made by a guy who loves kung fu movies, who was able to take $1 million and make a kung fu movie.
The name Wu-Tang. Hello.
Wu-Tang Clan. Exactly.
Yeah. Come on, all the samples and please. I actually
had a hard time figuring out what I was going to bring in today because of all of the Wu-Tang things I have in my collection.
Yeah.
But yeah, I decided to go with my original pressing of Wu-Tang 36 Chambers, and I did. RZA was nice enough to sign it for me on the last day of shooting.
Very cool.
So yeah,
very cool. Yeah, this is a great interview we get into with Tuttman.
Yeah, we talk about a lot of good things. We definitely get into the safety issue, which is really interesting because we also talk about the other people that we don't really talk about that are at risk on set, which is the camera guys. Yeah,
the camera guys. I did not know that statistically more camera guys have died on set than any other department. I did not know that.
That's crazy.
It's not a cool fact to know, but it's an interesting fact to know. But his interview was great. We really dive deep into this fight scene. So for those listening or watching, go check the show notes. We have a nice side-by-side comparison video of both versions of the fight, or at least part of the original Killer fight and the Wu-Tang Clan version.
Fun little mashup.
Yes. I keep saying Wu-Tang Clan. It's like I just can't help it. I know it's Wu-Tang, but every time I say Wu-Tang Clan, I know, but I'm referring to the TV show.
Wu-Tang. They are the Wu-Tang. Well, it's
American Saga.
Yeah. It's Wu-Tang American Saga. So you don't have to
but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll also link the original Killer fight so you can see that. And Kevin Rogers was awesome enough to put the previs for this fight up on YouTube for everybody to see. So we'll link that in the show notes as well. Thank you, Kevin Rogers, for doing that.
Thanks, Kev.
For all the fans out there. And so there's a lot of material for you guys to watch. So I would hit pause, watch this stuff, come back, listen to the interview.
And if you have not seen The Killer, I would suggest, again, stopping before you watch this episode and watch this movie.
Yeah. It's a great movie, man. It's so good.
It's one of the greatest action films of all time.
Yeah, for real. It is. That's not an understatement. You're not exaggerating. The John Woo stuff. Like, if you only know John Woo, like John Woo Came to America,
from Face Off.
Like Face Off forward, then you don't know the real
Then
John
you don't
Woo.
know. Yeah.
Although I do love Face Off.
Face Off is a great movie. My favorite is Hard Target.
Hard Target is awesome.
Hard Target is good. Lance Henriksen, Van Damme. I mean, that's a great movie.
Yeah. Van Damage.
That was my favorite Van Damme movie. Was Hard Target.
Was it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I even have a version of it. There's like a director's cut that has additional scenes in it.
Cool.
And the opening scene is awesome because you see that guy that's running, he's actually a badass and fucks up a bunch of guys. And before he just gets like blown up in the house. Yeah, so any of you guys who watch that, there's a director's cut of Hard Target that you should go see.
Oh, sweet.
Because it's awesome.
Sweet. Go get your Blu-ray. Don't get rid of your PlayStation.
No, don't get rid of your PlayStation.
You'll need to play those Blu-rays because, man, physical media is disappearing, dude.
It is. But I feel like it's coming back because I've started buying more lately because I just don't trust streaming anymore. So I'd rather just own it.
Well, because
no one can take that away from me. Because stuff disappears from my fucking Amazon library.
Or you, quote unquote, bought something and then it's gone. So I didn't really buy it.
I didn't buy it.
You're basically leasing it for a long period of time.
Right? That's weird how they can actually like literally had movies in my Amazon library that I went and I looked one day and was gone.
Yeah.
And then I had to look online and they're like, yeah, they just took them out because whatever.
Well, if I can't download the file or
no
have
refund,
the
no
DVD
nothing, just
whatever. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Totally. Yo, so this is the part where some listeners might hit skip. But don't skip, you motherfuckers.
Right? Because we need to thank our sponsors.
Yes, we do.
We do. And let's go right off the bat. Let's Tactical Black. Yep. If you want to learn how to run and gun, shoot safely on and off screen, they are your go-to place.
Dude, and we do actually get into some conversation in this episode about gun safety. And that in Tuttman's case, at least, this fight was one of the last ones where they used blank firing weapons, before the whole Rust incident happened and stuff. So we talk a lot about that. And Tactical Black, if you want to know about gun safety, Tactical Black in LA is a place to go that we recommend. And don't forget, all our sponsors we have worked with personally.
We are. And if you want to shoot at a car, then you would want to get in touch with Metro Camera Cars.
Yeah, just don't shoot the driver, please. Well, actually, no. Metro Camera Cars are not usually the chase car or the hero car or whatever.
But if you want to get the action from inside the car or see what's going on, what do you call the rig that they have?
The pod?
That is so awesome.
I don't know if Metro Camera Cars has a pod.
I thought I saw the big crane off.
No, they have the boom in the crane. No,
that's what I mean. The boom in the crane, like that thing.
That thing's awesome.
That's amazing.
And there's a really good interview with Joe about that, talking about the different spaces in which you can actually use those, right? Because you can't extend into another lane on a highway and all these other issues about having this appendage on your vehicle. So
and you have to drive and not look at it.
Well, yeah, because you have the camera operator sitting in the car, not driving at the same time, Paul. But listen, Metro Camera Cars is awesome. Joe Baris is awesome. And we've worked with him before on shows. We've trained with him. He's also a stunt performer. So we highly, highly recommend them. And they work nationally. They're freaking awesome. Yeah.
And then on top of that, we have Brett Copes, our favorite peoples with Fight or Flight Entertainment.
Yes. If you want to fly a person, learn how to fly a person, learn what it's like to be flown, and get a primer on how to be safe when you're being flown. Brett Copes, Fight or Flight Entertainment, the way to go. He does amazing workshops around the country. If you follow our social media at Fights with Friends Pod, we are always sharing info about Brett's upcoming workshops and stuff. We highly recommend. They're great.
Absolutely. And of course, our one and only favorite go-to place to figure out what is going on in this industry.
You mean how to contact stunt coordinators?
Yeah, that.
Oh, that would be on Stunt Contact?
Wait, that makes Stunt Contact. I get it now.
Yeah.
I get it. It only took, what, 9 episodes, 10 episodes?
It's a funny.
I got it.
I made it funny. But Stunt Contact is awesome. The interface is awesome. And it's not just about stunt coordinators. It's what's in pre-production, what's in development, what's actively shooting at the moment, the stunt coordinator list.
And of course, the note-taking system so you do not double send your stuff to people.
Yeah, and actually, just last week in the subscription, I got the quarterly production report, which I didn't know that they send out, but that was really awesome. So extra little thing. If you subscribe and you get their updates, you'll get all that other info too, which is really cool. So Stunt Contact does a great job. Can't recommend them enough. They're freaking awesome.
All right, man. Well, let's get Tuttman on here and let's get into this episode.
Before we bring on Tuttman.
What? We have another one?
Yeah. Well, we have to wait a minute because people skipped 30 seconds. So now they're coming back. And now that they're coming back, we're going to say support our Patreon.
Support our Patreon. Oh my God. Like, follow, subscribe, all of the things, please.
Yes.
That's how we get all of our what do you call it?
Money.
Yes. Our money.
Well, Patreon is money.
But liking the follow with the Apple.
We get, listen, the more you like us, comment on wherever you listen to us, the more you subscribe to us, it all helps the mythic algorithm. We can show up in people's feeds more. If you like it, your friends will see it. If you comment, your friends will see it. Like that stuff is all important. I mean, for the life of me, I can't figure out these damn algorithms, but I'm told it's important if you like us and subscribe to us.
Yeah. My wife is always like, make sure you tell everybody to like, follow, and subscribe. And I'm like, okay.
Hey, listen, I will tell you this. When we look at the matrix, we it's important, like how many people viewed, how many people are subscribing. That's all important. And that's all stuff that future guests will want to know.
True.
So please do like, subscribe, comment, follow us, share. Listen, we can't depend on the algorithms, right? So you guys need to share our posts too. That would be extremely helpful. And if you do decide to fork up a couple of bucks, as low as $5 or even less if you want, you will get on our Patreon early access to the episodes.
That's right. You'll get them a week early.
Yeah, you get them a week early. So the Patreon folks will get them on Mondays and the public gets them on Fridays. So you'll have quite a bit of advance notice. We also have private chats designed for each episode. So you want to talk about this episode, there'll be a chat for this episode, so on and so on, just for our patrons. So we really love you guys that do subscribe to us, and we want to love more of you. That sounds really creepy.
That's so weird.
And with that, let's bring on this other guy that we love. David Tuttman.
I need a shower.
See you on the flip side.
So here we are with David Tuttman. Tut, how you doing, brother?
Hello, gentlemen. Excited to be here. I love the world of stunts, and although I've never, other than once, thrown a punch in real life, the idea of fighting with friends has its intrigue for sure.
It is definitely more fun when you're drinking beer too.
That is also very true.
This is true. But thanks for coming on, man.
Well, thanks for having me.
And let's just start. I figure we'll start this how we start all of our days. Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor.
Doctor.
At last week we were 2 weeks ago, last episode, we were talking about American Werewolf in London, which is also John Landis. So nice little reference.
Right.
For those out there listening, if just message us or comment, see if you know what reference we're referencing right now.
So just about pretty much every day on set, Tut, me, and 3 or 4 others, that was how we started our day every time we saw each other.
Absolutely. It's nothing but medical. It's nothing but medical consideration and professional courtesy.
So we are here today to. I mean, there's so many different rabbit holes we can go down with talking about the scene, but we're We're here to talk about the Wu-Tang American Saga and the reimaging of the church gunfight from The Killer, from John Woo's The Killer.
And for those listening, hit the pause button, go to the show notes, and watch the fight, and then come back and finish this conversation because it'll be linked in the show notes.
Are we also going to put your...
we're going to have the side-by-side comparison of the original Killer.
That's cool.
And the Wu-Tang American Saga Killer.
Yes.
Which was really tough to do because the original one is like an 11-minute scene.
Yeah, and
it is.
And television being what it is, there's no way they're giving you 11 minutes for a fight.
I mean, that scene probably would have cost now. I don't even want to think about how much money that scene would have cost to redo shot for shot. That would have been a lot of money.
But that brings us back to the question. So you were tasked, you and the team, of course, were tasked to do this recreation in the spirit of that original scene. Where do you start?
Well, our bosses, Outsi and Riza, are both very well versed in martial arts drama. They basically said, we're all going to take a look at it. When they had influences, it definitely behooved me to look at them and grab hold of the visuals, singularity of what they were, what they're talking about. And this fight scene was so much fun just to watch. It always has been.
And unlike most, now Riza wasn't a director. Riza was the executive producer, but he was there every single day behind the camera. And we know, working. It was amazing.
Riza's, we know he's a martial art movie fan, but had you seen The Killer prior?
Yeah, I'd seen it, but many years ago. It had been a long time, and my journey with Wu got me into watching a bunch of the movies again. Over time, because of the references and because of how important they were to my bosses in the referencing, in the show. And with this one, particularly with this fight, we took very seriously the notion of recreating a bunch of the iconic moments in it. We wanted very much to have someone thrown into a huge wall of candles. We wanted the fall off, the bamboo construction tower.
Back to back, the gun toss.
Yeah, the gun toss was a really big deal for us. And, so we really dissected and saw how best for us with our current technology and we had a day and a half to do it, how indeed we were going to fulfill it. So.
This was the day they brought everybody in on Saturday, right? This was didn't we shoot this on Saturday? Yeah.
We did an 8-hour day to clean it up and to finish it up. We had done a full 13-hour day the night before, or it wasn't the night before, but it was a week before or something. The schedule is a little fuzzy for me in that regard, but yeah, we knew it was big. We found a really neat place to do it, kind of a broken down church instead of the whiteness of the church in the original scene, which kind of put it into the world of Shaolin and Wu-Tang Shaolin, which was really kind of fun. And we took advantage of the decay of the place as part of how we staged the fight.
Pete Sheck and the rest of Set Deck, they did a great job.
Great job. And, I'm very proud of the camera crew. It's in all honesty, one of the last times we actually used, live, I mean by live, half load munitions and had 3 armorers. Everyone knew what was happening at every beat. There were no stray angles for gunfire. It was completely safe. And, I think everyone's really jazzed by the experience, to be honest.
Yeah, and we had Roberto Lopez was rigging, right?
Yes, Roberto did the rigging.
He was doing all the flying, so that was fun. And for those of you who don't know, he is a John Woo super nerd.
Yeah.
So for majority of that day when he wasn't watching guys fly around, he and I were sitting in the corner, and he was just telling me the greatest John Woo stories ever.
Oh, Roberto did his time, right, working in Hong Kong.
Yes.
Too. Yeah, so that's like in his DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then Kevin Rogers was the stunt coordinator. We also have linked in the show notes the previs that was shot for this fight.
When you saw the previs and you saw where this was going, what went through your head?
I mean, it actually all made sense to me. I mean, the thing, in all honesty, about previses, and it's almost always the case, is that everyone has to, in the first place, remember that previs are generally done on 1 or 2 pound cameras as opposed to 50 or 60 pound cameras. So, so the type of things that go into it, the speed of moves potentially, and the quick adjustability from high to low are things that are pretty specialized when you get into heavier, the lenses weigh 10 times to 15 times as much as the entire phone or light camera that's used. So, so with any previs as a cinematographer, you're taking a look at the spirit of it and the particular beats. And then with, discussion in terms of how long all these things take, you get into a place where you really shape what you're actually going to try to shoot. Mm-hmm. And when I saw this previs, I thought it was really good. I thought it was pretty darn truthful to the sequence. It did get pared down. As needed. But at the same time, we knew we were flying into it with everyone understanding and wanting to replicate what was such a great piece of, our fight cinema.
That's one of the most iconic shootouts in history.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty amazing.
And when you see the two scenes, even, I mean, it's impossible to line them up, but if you look at the side by side that we put up, the anchor point is where with the gun toss,
mm-hmm. Right,
and it actually kind of fits really well together. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
So definitely check that out. You can see both.
Yeah, I think Kevin did a great job and
really great
getting all of the honestly the most iconic points of this into one.
We're still in the American Werewolf in London episode.
into this small 4 minutes.
It was less. It's like
less.
It was like two and change.
And he got all of these the great iconic points from this 11-minute shootout. I mean, I thought he did a great job.
I will say that an interesting experience in all this is I feel pretty well versed in stunt work and fights. As a cinematographer and as a director, I did a bunch of action in my time. We had a director, Nigella, who's a wonderful person, but is not versed in action. Mm-hmm. And, but very much understood the spirit and represented making sure it all happened in a way that the audience was going to see fit. But,
now sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
But I think that, Kevin played a huge role. And I'm also going to say that, our AD, Dave Wexler, did.
I was going to say, I remember we brought in Wex those days, to kind of take the helm and run the show on those.
Yeah. And we broke it down
because I remember hearing his voice
all the time. We were able to translate a lot of the pieces into things that we could do with more modern equipment. We used a 30-foot Technocrane for a bunch of it, which allowed us to go from low to high, all the things that a previs can do. The Technocrane with the right treatment allows you to do most of it in a rather sophisticated and beautiful way. So, I feel as if we were able to capture those base moments and the dance of it all, mm-hmm. And give the actors room for, their bonding moments, the gun tosses. It's huge. It's so much about Raekwon and Ghostface and, and how they end up together and their building of trust over years, so it was really interesting.
Layers.
Yeah.
To follow up on what you were saying about you having some more experience shooting action than the director did, it's oftentimes like the DP feels almost like the glue that's holding everybody together. Like you're sort of in the middle of everything, Take it back. When did you start? Because I know you've directed episodes of television too, Blindspot and some other action-oriented shows.
Damages the following.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit. When you started thinking about doing this as a profession, like how did that come around? Were you school trained or self-taught, or how did that?
I went to school and didn't really enjoy college very much, but in the midst of it, I found a professor who was really interesting, who taught a class on, the first class I took was on the films of Stanley Kubrick. And with that, I ended up making a minor in college on film history and aesthetics, and kind of figured, well, if we're deconstructing it, we can construct it. People construct it. So I became a PA, and I PA'd for like 6 years while I learned the business and figured out that camera was my route, in that I want to be in decision making without the hassles of production. I just saw production, having gotten to know it, as really not a place where I was going to express my desires to become a storyteller potentially. So I slowly learned the cameras and became a camera assistant, and joined NABIT because the IATSE at that point was a closed shop, and ended up working all the time in NABIT. And then NABIT merged with the IA, and I took on Law and Order as a focus puller, and grew up there, becoming an operator and cinematographer there. And
so for those listening, I know Paul and I know, but maybe not everybody knows, what is a focus puller?
Focus puller, he's the first camera assistant, he or she. They basically, when you look at a shot and you see the focus change from one person to another in the background or into someone in the foreground, there's a person actively manipulating the lens and assessing the relationship between the camera and the subject, and indeed pulling focus, keeping things in focus. There are many times where if someone moves forward an inch or two, they can be out of focus. So it's a very stressful, highly trained, very intuitive position, which involves a lot of storytelling sense as well.
Sure.
So it's a really fun job, and it comes at you really fast to begin with.
I think a lot of people, like, just not in the industry, don't realize that it's not the camera operator doing the focusing. Right?
Yeah.
They
like
don't
in
realize
a documentary, you'll often
Right.
see that, where a camera operator is often pulling their own focus, or concert movies often enough and stuff like that. But there's so much going on, and not the focus puller isn't just responsible for that. The camera focus puller is responsible for the personnel and the management of the department, in essence, and works for the cinematographer and under the operator or with the operator, but is responsible for the overall maintenance and proper functioning of the equipment. So it's a very layered job.
I wasn't aware of
Is
that.
that also the same person that I see that's usually got a hand on the waist or is behind the camera that is leading them where to go to make sure they don't, and usually giving them the taps on the shoulder?
No, that would be a grip, and generally the dolly grip or camera grip. That's another very skilled position. The dolly grip is someone, a dolly, of course, is a wheeled vehicle that supports the camera, and they can boom, and they can crab side to side or move forward. They're very versatile instruments that help you with your heavy camera, putting it steadily basically a dolly grip is responsible for putting the camera in the right place in space at the right time. So it's a very interpretive job as well. Are you moving with a subject? Are you moving slower than the subject or faster than the subject? Or, do you meet someone at that mark as they get there? Or are you there first? Or are you trailing? All these different interpretations of movement are part of what a dolly grip does. And in a fight scene, particularly, dolly grips are often there to steer, like you said, steer operators around to make sure if they're backing up or moving, that they aren't going to face a sudden impact, unexpected impact or obstruction, or, and save them from potential injury. I find that most fights, I'm really fond of most fights being handheld rather than supported and rooted, on a machine. That it's important you need a very good operator to keep it steady and be true to the beats, but it's the best way to quickly and under the most control know you're in the places you want to manage the fight. And fights are all about the beats, all about registering what's happening. You can have a couple of guys tumbling around and really not know what's going on. Maybe that's part of the story for a minute, but ultimately you want to, as a cinematographer and as a camera operator and focus puller, you want to know that you're isolating the moments that tell the audience what's really happening and lay impact on what the characters are experiencing.
So you you took this class in Kubrick films, and you became a PA and all that. And so now, fast forward, I'm
on Law and Order.
You get the Law and Order,
and I get promotions, and I end up the cinematographer on the show, and there was a point in time where it was just time to go. I had been there it was the only job in town for a long time. I was really lucky. I did 13 of the first 17 years of the show. And,
wow.
And with that, I'd started shooting. It was really time to get to know myself as a cinematographer on different projects. And I was lucky enough to do a pilot with a director named Andy Tennant, who had done a couple of big movies, previous to that. And that kind of got me set up to be asked to do Damages, which was a really big break for me and probably one of my favorite shows that I've ever done. And I got to direct there as well. But that wasn't that was not an action-packed show. Every once in a while, we'd have something going on, but there was one particularly really good knife fight, I'll say. But it was a show to harness my lighting talents in a way and learn about how I wanted things to look and learn about video shooting. It was my first real HD shooting.
Oh, wow.
Random question. Have you ever worked with Manuel?
Manuel Beltier?
Yes.
Yes. Manuel and I have circled a lot.
Okay.
I know him.
I wanted to ask if you had worked with him, what it's like, and I call him the Prince of Darkness.
So can you tell everybody who is Manuel?
So if you guys have ever seen Jessica Jones, Manuel, Manuel is,
Beltier, right?
Yeah, Beltier.
He's a gaffer. He's lighting or what?
No, he's a cinematographer.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a cinematographer, and he did Jessica Jones. I believe he did season 1 and season 2, but I call him the Prince of Darkness because he shoots in the dark so well. Mm-hmm. And that's why I was asking when you were if you had ever worked with him, because talking about just how
now he's shooting the Gilded Age, which is far from dark. So
right.
It's really interesting because I went from a show like Damages, which was all about lighting a leading lady, to doing The Following, which was a really dark serial killer, kind of phantasmical serial killer drama is how I would put it. It lost its soul early on in a way, which was interesting, but because it really wanted to be a darker show than it was allowed to be by the network.
Oh, interesting. So was it on Damages that you got the bug to direct, or how did that come about?
I kind of always wanted to direct since those college days and making movies, but it was a long road. It was, it took me till I was 50, but I definitely had intentions of growing into that. And part of why I think I got the chance was, the writer strike before this one.
2007.
2007, 2008. I marched with the writers a lot. And, I was very fond of the creators of Damages. And with that, when it started rolling around again, I got a couple of episodes of Gossip Girl to do right away. They were finishing up their season, and they wanted me to stay. And with that, the creators of Damages says, well, if you come back, you're going to direct. No brainer for me. I mean, plus the actors on Damages. I mean, I got to my first episode of TV. I directed Martin Short and Lily Tomlin, aside from all the amazing regulars on the show. And, so that was, and Campbell Scott, he was there. He was in that episode too. And it just, they gave me this amazing experience, which was just a natural place to go back to. But I'd always intended to, but it was nice that it wasn't me pushing it, that it was, my boss's idea. That I appreciate that a lot. I mean, I've had to push it on occasion and say, if you want me back, I really need to know that this is going to happen. But you try to do that in a rather genteel manner. And usually you do it by proving your worth on the set, and they know that you're worth having to do it. So
are you mainly a New York guy? Or
I've actually never worked in LA. I've been lucky enough to do some out of town work, but never for very long. I'm really based in, my work is really New York based as well. Yeah.
Right. And so what led to Wu-Tang Clan? How did you, Wu-Tang American Saga, how did you get that?
Well, it was pandemic time. And I hadn't been working as a cinematographer a lot. I'd had a very decent streak of directing, basically, but that kind of dried up. And with that, a producer who I really dig, Gail Barringer, who was the executive producer on Wu-Tang at that point, and someone we mentioned before, Dave Wexler, both knew that they were looking for a new cinematographer. And Wexy particularly was like, Tut, you gotta, we're very good friends, and we're really good partners in crime on a set. We do very well.
Wex is one of the doctor guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, and also just, I got my job the same way. Gail and Wex.
And with that, as a cinematographer, I let my agent know, and Gail called my agent and scheduled an interview, and my interview was with Alex and RZA. And, I had a great interview. I'm very proud of my interviewing. I do pretty well. And, it was great to meet those guys. And, I gave them a couple of really honest answers about a couple of things. And at a point, I was asked if I was going to be all right with inexperienced directors, being that I was a director myself. I kind of said, well, you don't know me yet. And I said, I figure that, you guys are going to have a lot to do over the next number of years. And if you get to know me as a storyteller and as a movie maker, you can decide, what to do. And basically people who've gotten to know me have always kind of promoted me as time goes on. And RZA at that point pretty much said, I've got another thing I got to do. It's been really great to meet you, but I'm good. And, and I said goodbye and finished up with Alex. But when he got off, I was like, I think I did really well there, because it just felt like he had heard exactly what he needed to. And he actually, from my understanding, called Wex up and said, your friend Tut is serious OG. And, which is one of the greatest compliments I have ever gotten, in all honesty.
That's awesome.
And so I ended up there. And with that, he was a great freaking boss. And Alex was too. They were totally on point and totally kind of, although giving some very tall orders and some difficult and tricky stuff to do and risk-taking stuff. That's the fun.
Very hands-on.
Yeah. So, it was that too with Damages. I'm very, very proud of the work there. And, I probably did my best looking show there in season 3, I think, which was Old Dirty Bastards, album. When they did the allegory on his making his solo album, we took him back into blaxploitation days and made a blaxploitation movie, and it was pretty darn great. We paid homage to a lot of great moments in 60s and 70s movies. It was really fun.
Well, I was going to say, throughout the whole entire season, you were kind of recreating a lot of great moments in cinema history, and just including kung fu films. You did oh man, what was not the Superfly episode?
That's one I'm talking about, the blaxploitation episode, which is really challenging and fun. Like with RZA, one of the things with RZA, there was a point in time, like the way he communicates is like no one else on earth. He has his own way of describing things, but it's always clear, or you can always get to the truth with him. He never minds getting to the truth, but like, something as simple as he was asked about in a new episode, Ghostface had gotten shot and he had a graze wound on his neck. And he was asked how big he wanted the bandage in the next episode. And he says, well, in this first episode, it was kind of the size of a half a Pop-Tart. And in this next episode, let's make it the size of a mini Snickers. And it's like, okay.
Everybody knows. You get it.
It was pretty darn great. I mean, I love that. So,
that's cool.
Personal storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, so you have all these, you were involved from the beginning. And so there's this tone that gets set. How much of, and I guess this kind of ties into the question that you said was in the interview. You're a director, and how's that going to work with other directors? Mm-hmm. Talk about the development of tone of this show, and then like the offshoot to doing blaxploitation, or the offshoot to do this or that. Like, how does that process work?
Sure. Well, I actually came in season 2. Okay. So I inherited a look and a visual culture, so to speak, but a good one. Gavin Kelly was the lead cinematographer on the show, and who's now in the ASC. And a really lovely guy and a really good partner. We had the most lovely conversations about what we were doing, and we're very different in ways, but we respected and enjoyed each other a lot. And so I came in I wasn't coming in to reinvent the wheel in any sort of way. And I'd say my basic rule in any show, my favorite answer is yes. It's always better to be able to just, achieve what's being discussed instead of having to correct or move it in a different direction. Although as a cinematographer, you're the deliverer of truth at a lot of times, and you have to let people know what it's going to take to do certain things and suggest other ways. And particularly with less experienced directors, and there's been a lot of that in television the last 5 or 6 years as the business tries to make up for its tremendous deficits, in diversity. It's an interesting place to want to see someone's vision fulfilled, but also really there's an art to television production that's different than a movie, or different than a soap opera, and different than writing a book. And so with that, to try to help them develop their filmmaking shorthand so they can successfully attack television. And some are more receptive than others, is what I was going to say.
So the other cool thing about this is you were kind of behind the camera, and in the beginning of season 2 was heavy during COVID.
Yes.
I know this because I was in charge of all the COVID on the show. So what was it like when you, from in the beginning? So how did you shoot the scenes when they wanted a lot of background? They're like, hey, there's a club scene. And, that was during the days when there was nothing I could do. Right. The cutoff was the cutoff. That was it.
Yeah.
So when the cutoff was 50 and they wanted to make it look like there was 150, how would you do stuff like that?
Well, a part of that, you were big actually in developing the mechanics for that within the show's culture. I mean, you end up breaking the room into what you might call tiles sometimes. Mm-hmm. And you do a locked off camera, and you occupy each tile for a run of the shot. And then in post-production, you're able to seamlessly recombine it and make it look like the room was full when it was only a quarter full, let's say, technically. So you do tricks like that. You play with, the architecture of a place so that the architecture takes up a piece of the frame to thicken it up and give it depth. And you shoot through a number of people to make it appear that there's more there than you do by using some longer lenses sometimes. Or, you pick a particular area and only shoot towards one side of a room to start. And then through trickery, you can replicate, you can change the background to other clothing or whatever and different activities on the other side of the room. But there are a lot of sacrifices involved in it. It means you can't see the room all at once. You can't give a director, a certain immediate scope that can, you can't do a crane shot off that tile necessarily, that comes down, swoops down with your actors without it being like a lot of thought and a lot of risk as to, can you match it back up, and extra equipment. In terms of my people and stuff, we just got through it. They didn't ask me to have fewer people. It was just, you could have fewer people on the set at a time. So you occasionally in tighter spaces, you'd have to say, all right, everybody out, 3 grips and 3 electrics coming in to hang some lights,
I remember those days. The
face masks, the shields were the masks never bothered me. I'm not anti-mask in any sort of way. The
face shields were a giant inconvenience.
Yeah.
I hated them.
And I'm not really a believer in that they worked. The shields, I think masking was a really important thing in limiting the population. And I think for all that they're noisy, the air scrubbers we had were really helpful and important. And I advocate using them to this day, because on the show I just finished, we were in some rather dank locations, and put a scrubber in there and make sure we pull a bunch of the mold out of the air. When
I was done, when they were done with COVID, and I was trying to keep my job because I loved making that Disney money. I wrote, I wrote,
Paul, baby.
Thank you so much. I wrote a thing saying that they should just turn the department into airborne illness prevention, and they should just have a standard of when
Health
you go
and
into
safety.
a place, a dingy and shitty basement, that they're like, okay, you guys need to bring a scrubber in here because everyone's going to get a fucking sore throat.
I started asking the shop steward to have them brought in in certain places. But yeah, I think there's totally a reason. Everybody's always talking about safety and the safety of the crew and this and that. And we just had that horrible accident a couple of weeks ago in Georgia where that armored car flipped because no one did anything wrong, but the wheels locked or something really not stunty happened that caused it. But people got wickedly injured, and a beloved grip in Los Angeles died going home last week after his second 14-hour day in a row.
Yeah, it was on 911, I think.
Yeah,
so horrible.
It's horrible.
I have there have been days when we've worked long days, and I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to take 20, 30 minutes in my car before I get on the road.
Yeah, and the companies are getting better about hotels around in the New York area. Certainly, if anyone needed safety rides, were universal on the job I just did. It was a night job, and half the crew at times was getting safety rides. Personally, I've never had a safety ride. I have a 40-mile drive pretty much each way. I will rest if I need to. I knock on wood. I've been very decent and not gotten woozy on the road. I know people who've talked about falling asleep on their way home and have survived it, and ended up in a ditch without getting hurt. Thank God. But it's a big thing. And, I'm talking to two guys who assume risks at work as stunt people. You're saying, yeah, you can dump that tray of metal objects on me as I'm sitting there. Paul just did a thing. It was a pretty gentle stunt, but he was the line of hot Chinese food for so with knowledge, and camera people actually statistically have had more deaths on set than any other profession or craft on sets. So we have to take this stuff very seriously, including the air we breathe.
I was just talking with somebody earlier, in this sort of culture of whatever you got to do to get the shot, and nobody will question if it looks great in the end. But, if something goes wrong, who are we going to throw under the bus or whatever? And people think of it, especially these days, people think of it as a stunt issue. Like when I'm coordinating a student film or something. I was just telling somebody else before we got online here that there has not been a thesis film for any university in the city that I've coordinated stunts for where I didn't have to demand a set medic. Like they all just across the board.
No, we'll be okay.
Yeah. Oh, and then it comes to, okay, well, we'll have one on a stunt day. And I'll say, it's not about the stunt day. You could be on location and somebody goes into anaphylactic shock because they get stung by a bee. You could lose a finger in a folding chair, which happened on a Blacklist episode.
I know the gentleman who it happened to.
Yes, and so it's not about the stunt day; it's about planning for failure and having
for safety. Yeah,
for safety.
I'm not going to mention the show I was working on, but I was working on a show one day, and I kept walking around set one day and something didn't feel right. They were doing a big stunt and something was going to go on. And I think I may have told the story, but I was looking for a throat lozenge and I kept walking around set and I couldn't find and for some reason my throat kept hurting. And I was like, why does my throat still hurt? I need a throat lozenge. And then I realized as I was walking around, I never got a throat lozenge because I didn't see the set medic and he wasn't in his normal spot. And then as they were getting closer and closer to doing this big stunt where they were going to blow someone through a plate glass window and ratchet him and all kinds of shit and throw him on a table and craziness. And then I'm like, oh, maybe he's not in this right spot. And I went and I looked everywhere. And long story short, the medic wasn't there. That day he wasn't supposed to come in and he had someone covering. The guy who was supposed to cover forgot and was on a date. And luckily I called it before they went into it because no one had noticed except for me. And then they were about to go into this big giant scene without a medic on set. And it didn't go wrong, but it didn't go right. And he hit the table weird and they called for the medic. And if they had done that and I didn't say anything beforehand, no medic would have been able to show up. So they actually stopped everything for about an hour or 40 minutes and waited for him to get there. And he showed up in black on black, like a black button down collared shirt, sleeves, pants, and dress shoes. Like he was on a date.
Yeah. I mean, listen, and then you're lucky if you get a qualified medic. If you're on a good production that has a union medic or
well, we have Vinny, and I love it when I see Vinny.
Yes, indeed.
There's no one more
Always
qualified than.
But there's the opposite. You're on some indie film, and you're like, "Where's the medic?" And their job is they're just an EMT that takes old folks from home to the shuffleboard game.
I know CPR,
and
I was a lifeguard.
And many times the state law of will supersede what's in the contract. So the company is only obliged to provide what state law says they can provide. They don't have to go above and beyond.
Well, that's why I call you Safety Steve for a reason now, because you've taken a stand when it comes to your student films. Like you're like, no, I will not. It's either a medic and me or not me.
Right. They don't get it, but more often than not, the student filmmaker will just not hire me and hire somebody else, and this goes on professional levels too. Often we've all heard stories of you speak up about something and then you're dismissed.
We may, yes, there's all too often. That's all I'm going to say. All too often.
Yeah.
But
I had that happen to me. I had that happen to me on a job years ago. I was a camera assistant, and it was a stunt movie, and there were 4 things that went wrong that night, which could have been deadly. And there was a point where I was pulling focus on squibs on a car hood, like 2 feet away from the lens. So I'm right next to it, and the lens has an optical flat in it to protect the lens, a piece of glass, pure glass. And I'm waiting for goggles. They said, "We can't wait. We got to go." Mm-hmm. So I pulled the plug out of the camera and I said, "No goggles, no shot." And at the end of the day, my friend, the camera officer, says, "Guess you're not coming back tomorrow." And I started yelling in front of the cinematographer, "Who the fuck wants to come back to this job with the way they behaved?" And I turned to the cinematographer and yelled at him. And then I said, "Good night. See you never." And like, that was it, but I think you have to sometimes.
Well, yeah, and this is what it comes down to. We've all been in situations. Every crew member, everybody from every department has probably been in a situation where there's pressure, there's time. We got to go, and you're questioning, and then sort of the action. We're about to say action in the back of your head. You're like, I really hope this goes okay, because
this better not happen, because it's all going to go bad. So I you shouldn't.
And it's like what Doc said, and we go back a couple episodes with Doc. He's like, are you willing to say something and potentially lose a job over it? But for safety, it's everybody's job to say something.
100%.
Yeah. 100%.
And not just, sometimes people are like, "I'm leaving. This isn't safe." It's such a weird, when people walk it's such a weird thing how do you not notice that you have professionals that are leaving? How does that not ring a bell? Like when 4 or 5 camera guys leave and you're like, whatever, fuck them. What do they know? It's like, what?
Yeah.
You're channeling into the pessimistic side of Steve. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but what I will say is that they notice and they don't care, because it's about making the money. So we'll just hire somebody else. You can walk. It's fine.
Well, there's an interview, right, about Tom Cruise when he did the Mission Impossible one before this, when he did the run on the building and the backflip around the corner, right? That huge stunt. And he was telling the stunt coordinator, the original stunt coordinator, he's like, "Hey, I want to do this." And then the guy's like, "You can't do that." And he fired him and found someone who would let him do it.
Yeah. Well, that's,
not saying that he couldn't do it, but, I'm just saying that it's like, as an example, they're going to get what they want. And if you can't give it to them, they'll find somebody else who can. And sometimes they will be like, "Okay, you're right." Sometimes they won't. And it's a risk you're going to have to take.
Yeah.
But I would rather not be there than be there and not have said anything.
Oh, 100%. Have a good conscience.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, so we shoot this amazing church fight scene.
Oh man, this was the question that I forgot. And then
and then you see it, and what are your thoughts when you see the final cut?
I went right to this. I was actually prepping, and I went right to the set with the. I got a studio cut, and I went right to the camera operators and showed it to them. Mm-hmm. They were on stage that day, and I must mention Ellie Aronoff, Blake Johnson, and Scott Konigsberg were the camera operators on the sequence, and they just did an outstanding job in figuring out, how do you handle Raekwon's roll to underneath the bamboo? And we came up with beautiful handheld configurations and a crane shot that really just tied it in. And the beauty of it was it really only took we did two, 3 camera setups ultimately, plus one more polish, but so efficient, but so crisp and interesting and exciting. It, so that was my first instinct. I was really proud of it. And I felt we fulfilled our end of the bargain, and I really wanted my peeps to see it.
Now, what did RZA say to you? Because I know he fucking loved it.
I don't know that RZA ever said anything directly to me, other than he dug it. I think it was just what he expected from me at that point, in all honesty.
That's very true. And I think I may have been near him when he was watching it. I think I may have been talking to Slice, but he loved it. He was very fucking excited.
Yeah. I'm very proud of it. It's one of the, there are a couple of things on Wu-Tang that really resonate, and this sequence is definitely one of them. It was wicked fun. Like I said, I sadly think it might stand out as one of the few times that we actually use real weapons on set. It's always plugs. It's always air guns. There are things that all these don't have, which I think add to the texture of gunplay. I don't own a gun. I don't advocate owning guns. I think people who own guns are more apt to get shot than people who don't have them. But with that, I respect them, and it's an individual's decision. And in this country, that's a whole other topic of conversation, of course, but there's a reality, cartridge ejections, muzzle flash, all these things that are still, they're artificially produced now, but it doesn't have the right feel to it. There's, you never know quite where a cartridge is going to bounce, in a way, other than to the side that that the hole is for it to eject, so I think there's really something interesting to all that we miss out on. But safety is important. So
it's important. I mean, those of us in New York, we don't have to focus too much on Rust, but when Rust happened, of course, this became a topic of conversation everywhere with everyone.
Big time.
And anybody who's been on a set in New York, though, has been on a big set anyway. Like Blacklist, for example, we always used blanks and blank firing weapons. And from a performer's perspective, it just feels different. It helps you get into character. This is a real thing. It's got weight. It's got, how you handle it.
It has recoil.
It's got,
all of it. Absolutely. 100%.
But we also have been very fortunate to be in a jurisdiction that has very strict regulations about how these weapons are used on set. And it wasn't like the middle of nowhere in, wherever.
They actually get the same safety memos. Well, I mean, it wasn't a union job, so I don't know. Maybe they didn't get the safety memos. But every day on a union set, there's a ladder memo. The handgun memo is memo number 1. If I'm not mistaken,
there's a memo for everything. There's a memo for everything: smoke, fog, this, that,
and
a safety meeting for all of it.
Yeah, and sadly, that was an event where it wasn't just one of the rules that was broken. It was numerous. And I do really believe that if you do things in the way that we've properly designed with the protocols we've put in place, everyone can deal safely and with knowledge as to what's happening in front and around them,
Oh, absolutely. And, and like you said, and I didn't know this, but that camera operators are statistically the most injured people on set. I think you said something to that effect, right?
It's actually about mortality. It's they suffer the highest mortality rate on set of any craft.
Yeah. And so Rust brought attention to firearms, but honestly, that was really in the continental United States anyway. It was the first death from a firearm on set since Brandon Lee.
Yeah.
And there's been tons of others that nobody hears about from other types of unsafe situations, you know?
Yes. Constantly.
Yeah. So, but that, to your point, that I think if people actually follow the protocol as more than just a recommendation, you know, then it works. It works, you know, and the lack of firearm injuries on sets is proof that it works.
But there is definitely, you know, when you were talking about there's a tone that when you use, you know, squibs, and when you have actual, you know, half loads going off or whatever, it sets a tone. And I remember I was doing one episode of Gotham, and they had the half loads in the gun, and everything was going off, and everything sounded great. And then there was another, there was something else we were doing. And in the next scene, I didn't have there was nothing in my gun. It was just empty, and I had to make it look like I was firing. And it felt so different. And it's just, even just trying to act like it looks like you're, you know, you can't fake the recoil in a gun to make it look real when you're spraying an automatic. And you know, so you just kind of have to do it without any recoil. It's the best way to make it go.
Yeah.
So yeah, those shots, they really do add a lot to a scene.
If
you actually say pew 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 when you do it, it works.
I've been in situations where actors start yelling bang, or, you know, bang on camera, like when recording. Yeah.
Wasn't there a story that Liam Neeson told, that he said, like, the first time that they were on set and they did their lightsaber thing, like him and Ewan McGregor, they both went.
I wouldn't be surprised, man.
Great.
I wouldn't.
Why ever not? Right.
Yeah.
He also said a great story that every time he walks through an automatic door, he does a force push, and he hopes somebody sees him and takes a picture.
That's pretty great.
So cool. So what do you got? What do you got coming up in the future? What's going on?
I just finished work on the show The Night Agent, the season 2 of Netflix show.
Ah, that's how you saw Paul's little.
That's how he saw me recently.
Yeah, and I finished that a week ago. And I'm first recovering and feeling human again, in all honesty. I'm getting old for the nights. And
Tut was the reason Adam Arkin came up and said hi to me, and I lost my shit. You dick.
Adam was great.
That's awesome.
I had a great. He directed the first 2 episodes I did there, and we had a lovely time. Really great. I owe him a phone call, Adam. And as of now, I've had a couple of inquiries, but I don't have anything going on. It's really slow. It feels like that. There are a number of people working, thank goodness, but it's probably half of what we're used to around here. If that, it's probably less than half.
Hopefully by the time people hear this, it's been just gone and in the wind, and there was no strike, and everybody's back to work and everything's going, but we're still in the midst of that lull of no one really knows what's going to happen. So no one's putting out any money if they're going to start losing it because there's another strike coming around the corner.
I honestly think, though, too, we're in a place, you know, Paramount just got bought. There's consolidation in the industry. It's
bundle after bundle after bundle.
It's driving my streaming shit fucking crazy.
Yeah,
man.
I don't even know what to, you know. And, you know, we're in a place where they were making so much stuff and questionable stuff. And, and these corporations it's less and less about storytelling. It feels like, especially when you go into, you know, your production meetings and stuff, and you start to think about what they're asked. The scheduling is becoming more drastic. They're expecting less, or they're expecting as much in less time, which means they're expecting less. I'm worried that we're in a place of contraction in the business because of balance sheets, aside from anything, because balance sheets and stock market success are more important than a hit right now. Right. And all these, and I get myself in trouble probably, but all these, you know, all these executives talk about their intellectual properties and their tent poles and this and that, and they're giving no credit to original thinking. And there's no sense that these are people who are willing to take risks. I mean, would anyone make The Wizard of Oz today?
I'm like, why do you need original thinking? Look at all of the things we can remake.
Well, that's it. That's I'm very, they're talking like, and I personally, I'm not a big comic movie person. I'm not a big Marvel Universe or DC Universe person. I can enjoy the individual movie, but I don't feel like I ever have to see a guy in a tight outfit and a cape again, and like Disney said they're only going to do like 3 Marvel movies next year or 2, they're announcing their cutbacks.
Yeah.
So I'm not so worried for me. I'm at a different place now in terms of just life. But, I worry for like my 40-year-old colleagues and
or what about you? You have 2 children, right? Are they moving into this industry or are they?
They're both artistic. Our younger son, Jesse, is a screenwriter and directs. But he's not interested in industrial filmmaking. He's making his way quietly and interestingly. But for him, it's all about the writing, and he makes money as a technical aide, doing like visual assist for village meetings and governmental stuff, and so he makes some money and keeps himself out of trouble and writes and he writes very personal stuff. So it's, for him, I don't think he really envisions it as being part of the industry so much as it's a form of storytelling that we love.
Well, I came and I helped you guys with one of those.
Yeah, you sure did. And
that was serious. That was like, I don't want to give anything away, but it was open heart surgery. It was deep.
Yeah.
It was serious shit. It wasn't like
Jesse's a deep guy. And I can understand why the industrial filmmaking can disturb someone whose love of it has got a different purity. Mm-hmm. Mine used to be pure. But with that, our older son is very musically inclined. He makes beats. Basically, he's very talented when it comes to constructing beats for hip hop music, and he's, but he makes his living outside the arts as well. Mm-hmm. And pursues that as an interest sporadically sometimes, but he's a little older now. So he's got to get more down to business. So
like all of us artists, I remember when I went to, my uncle was a vice president of a bank. I mean, my dad was a career fireman, but I remember when I'm the first non-soldier fireman, cop guy in my family.
I'm the first of a lot of things in my family.
So when I wanted to go to art school for college, luckily I got a full scholarship, so they didn't have to worry about paying for it. Then they were like, okay, well, I remember my uncle saying to me, so that's really cool and everything, but so like, how are you going to actually live? It's like, how are you going to pay the bills? How are you going to bring home the bacon? I was like, I don't know. I'll figure out a way. So far, I've managed to figure out a way, but like what you said about your son sort of not thinking of himself as being part of the industry, I kind of can relate to that. Mm-hmm. Like when people will say like, oh, you're like, you work in Hollywood, meaning the more global term of Hollywood, not Hollywood. I'm like, I don't see myself that way.
Right.
Really.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I just like doing this stuff. And so I don't really see myself kissing any rings or doing anything like that. And,
I'm a New Yorker doing this, and yes. I've never worked. I've gone out for meetings and interviews in LA. But I've never worked in the factory town, and New York in ways is becoming more of one right now.
The factory's closing, so don't worry about it.
But there's part of it too. Like, just worked on the show, the studio in its huge corporate umbrella, the owns stages where the studio then rents the stages from itself.
Right.
So that money never leaves Netflix's umbrella or whatever, right? And then they charge the state 30% incentive. They get 30% of that money that never left their own house. So they're making 30% money just by paying themselves.
There you go.
They're gonna stay. But they're not going to necessarily stay in other people's houses. They're just going to use theirs, because on every dollar they spend, they're making 30 cents and not losing a penny. It's incredible.
Yeah. And all that stuff, like you said, it's all subcontract under subcontract and LLC, but this LLC owns that LLC, and everybody, it's all so difficult to.
It all ends up on the same balance sheet at the end of the year, which is all they care about.
But it's also they get everything, but if something goes wrong, they can blame it on that one or that one or that one or that one.
Absolutely,
that wasn't us. That was them.
That was our money losing division right there. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was
our money losing
when I was just talking to our friend in the safety business. He was saying it's very hard to get OSHA reports or anything from incidents on set because it's all NDAs and which LLC actually did they even report it, first of all, and if so, which one? And it's like, let's say you were gonna, for argument's sake, you want to hire somebody, first AD, and you want to check out, how many productions was this guy on that had OSHA violations? It'd be like impossible to.
Yeah.
Impossible.
No way.
It's impossible. Yeah. Whereas in general industry, it's not impossible. General industry, it's all very, very public, but not in our industry. I feel like we should end on something more
like fighting.
Yes, like fighting. But dude,
so outside of this, obviously this church fight. What I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. Has there been any other fights or any other action that you've shot that kind of stands out, that sits in your brain, that you're just like, man, that was.
Well, tell us about that.
That was a great day.
You mentioned a knife fight in Damages.
It was towards the end where one of the characters basically is reaching the height of his conflict and troubles, and he's kind of been in hiding, but he's discovered, and someone comes into his place. I don't want to, and they end up with.
This show's been out for a while. Fuck spoilers.
He ends up, Tom ends up in a huge fight in this apartment he's been hiding out in, and ends up getting badly stabbed. But we broke it. Just somehow there was just a violence and a suddenness to that one, and Damage was a place where we got into some nice visual abstractions. So there were just some interesting framings of blood and other stuff within it that I thought were really just kind of fun and very complete.
Cool.
The Following was a great show for stunts and violence, and we got really good at dissecting, how to most effectively, aside from, it was less about violence, more about building suspense. That's the most important part of the whole thing. We've all been in place. We've all as viewers seen 10,000 shootings and explosions and this and that. And if you don't care about who's in that explosion, if the context doesn't provide it, sometimes they're spectacular stunts and pieces on their own, but generally you're not going to care that much because you've seen a lot of that. So a lot of it comes down to providing the audience with the tension beforehand that allows for this explosion of action to be most satisfying. The Following did a lot of that. It was a show, for my understanding of it is, initially it was presented to me as anyone walking down the street could be a serial killer, could be a follower of this guy. And you never know, you can't, every step you take could be your last because of the threat that this guy's, providing in society. And, part of the early show, he has a son and he's divorced and he's fighting to get his son back. And in the 5th or 6th episode, initially, the kid was supposed to die. And then it was really going to become about the rage of the serial killer and his vengeance on the world. But the network was like, you can't kill a kid.
Not
so
yet.
He all of a sudden becomes
too early.
He all of a sudden, and so all of a sudden it became the hunt for little Joey instead of this really insidious, that we have to question the streets we're walking on. And it, as opposed to being like an allegory for questioning your society, it just became another hunt.
The first version of that story is so interesting because that's very real. I mean, take like the Gilgo Beach killer that they just caught, right?
Yeah.
And then you see the interviews of people that rode the Long Island Railroad with him every day and stuff like that. And funny story, in college, I think I told you this. In college, I did 3 semesters of in France. I studied medieval archaeology. So I worked on this archaeological dig, and it was the School of Visual Arts where I went to college, and the New York Institute of Technology. So it was like the art students and the architecture students. We all were workers on this dig.
That's so cool.
The Gilgo Beach Killer was a New York Institute of Technology architecture student. So when this whole happened, we have a little private Facebook group, and people were like, "Isn't that crazy?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, He was part of our dig. He was part of one of the
trenches
students.
with this guy. Yeah.
Yes. It's so crazy, dude. So crazy.
Wow.
But it goes to what you're saying about the following. I mean, anybody you could meet at any time, you have no idea what's
and that's a really challenging kind of storytelling premise. How do you present that? And the way in which the camera would set all that up was really going to be fun. And it just kind of, got lost in the milquetoast of network, TV. That show was really fun. I mean, we'd stand around the monitors watching the stabbings and we were really proud of them. The whole notion of what's the best, is a retractable the best? There are points where you'd use just a handle and mat it in, and, coming up with, the shots editorially to create when I directed an episode, Ruth Kearney stabbed a guy in the temple to rob him, and how best to set that up for the suddenness of it. That type of stuff is really fun. And, I'm really proud of that, because it's not just about that beat. It's about the editorial setup and the complete thinking about how you get there,
But this is the fun stuff that we all,
right?
Our is the collaboration and just coming up with these ideas and building something that we can all just really be proud of,
Yeah. It's great. It's the best. We're lucky. We get to tell stories, and people have been doing that since they were people, and we have these pretty great tools for it. And we could say what if and really come up with some great answers as to how to do it. It's
It's awesome.
Pretty darn great.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and on such short notice too. It was
no
great.
problem.
It was so great, dude.
Stevie Paul. It was really fun. Thank you. And,
I love your work, buddy.
Yeah, back at you. And I hope I see you guys soon.
Yeah,
for sure, man. I'll probably call you tomorrow.
Beautiful. Looks beautiful.
Fights with Friends is brought to you by Breakfall Studios and Press Record Studios. Executive producers Stephen Kepfer, Paul Veracci, and Tiago Benedetti. Produced by Matthew Kaplowitz. Associate producers Becca G.T. and Jared DeCroce. Our video editor is Matthew Kaplowitz. Original music by Aru Luster.